the private sector. So I initially wanted to analyze and see if the link between profits and social and or environmental performance actually really existed. See if the empirical evidence was actually there. I launched into my research kind of believing the private sector didn't have any other responsibilities other than to make money and obey the law. And that engaging in socially or environmentally driven initiatives, they can still make money and help. However, and it's important that the private sector is not required as such to engage in this, but could if they chose to, and there were benefits in it. However, as my research evolved, I began to believe that in a rapidly globalizing economy with varying levels of government capacity, that the private sector needs to take on further responsibilities, and not only to facilitate sustainable development, but to facilitate its own sustainability, corporation sustainability. As far as the research parameters, I only looked at publicly traded companies. First off, that's where the wealth of information is. They're already engaging in this type of behavior on some level. They have the resources for change. They have the most influence, and they tend to promote best practices that trickle down into small and medium-sized enterprises with which they interact. For the theoretical constructs, most publicly traded companies operate under one of the two major models: the shareholder wealth maximization model and the corporate wealth model. The shareholder wealth maximization model, it assumes the efficiency of markets, that they're regularly updated in an efficient manner. And maximizing shareholder value is therefore the primary goal of management. It's the ultimate goal of management. The corporate wealth model does not necessarily assume the efficiency of markets, and in actuality it's irrelevant. The shareholder in this model becomes one of the firm's, stakeholders. Stakeholders include employees, local communities, governments, local ecosystems, any person or thing or entity affected by the corporation itself. Accordingly, the firm takes into account all stakeholders, including shareholders. They still remain very important, but when determining their strategic goals and objectives and their levels of success. So the core responsibilities for the private sector are designated as growth and profit, which is otherwise termed as maximizing shareholder value, and following the laws. A corporation can't exist without following the laws, and included in following the laws is some minimum level of financial reporting to consistently update shareholders on financial performance. An important thing to realize when we move on to the responsibilities to sustainable development, that none of the responsibilities to sustainable development can really be responsibilities if they undermine the core responsibilities, namely growth and profit. And so these all must work in unison. So the 4 responsibilities to sustainable development, starting on your right and working down, environmental strategy. And I kind of chose environmental strategy because it made chronological sense. That's where a lot of this social or environmental corporate initiatives was founded upon the environmental movement in the late 1980s. An environmental strategy, a corporate environmental strategy, means a lot more than just environmental reporting. It takes into account a corporation's relationship with the environment as a whole. It takes into account how it's going to adjust to changes in the environment and how its operations affect the environment and how it plans to minimize those negative effects. The second responsibility is stakeholder engagement, and many firms are engaging in this at present. This is a growing trend, and it's critical to corporate sustainability. It has wide-reaching benefits to local communities, governments, ecosystems, and some of the strongest cases of stakeholder engagement are in the extractive industries, where both these industries as well as the stakeholders themselves have seen great benefits from this relationship. The third responsibility to sustainable development is corporate governance. But I define this as good corporate governance because every corporation, particularly publicly traded corporations, have some level of corporate governance. It's just a question of whether it's good corporate governance or bad corporate governance. The corporate governance is an important thing. It relates mostly to transparency, which is a major theme in Sophia's chapter, and it's critical to all the other responsibilities. Good corporate governance involves internal controls, and internal controls that promote communication, open reporting, and a clear separation between management and board of directors, which is a very pertinent topic at present. These controls, when applied effectively, in turn create transparency and accountability, and above all, a strong corporate culture. And this corporate culture plays a large part in a strong corporate culture plays a large part in facilitating all of these responsibilities. And then the last one is corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility is a tricky term. It's thrown about quite a bit. And what it comes down to is that it really means a different thing for each company. It's unique to each situation. And what a corporate social responsibility initiative in one company may look very different to one in another company. CSR is very tied to brand image, and it's something that every company must take into account on some level if it wants to survive and grow. It's a bit like corporate governance in that sense that every corporation, every MNC is engaging in it to some level. It's just a question of how effectively or to what degree they're engaging in it. In my paper, I use Procter & Gamble as a perfect example of the application of an effective corporate social responsibility initiative. So the four goals that I just outlined are obviously all related to each other, but they stand separate and unique in and of their own right. What they essentially contribute to is corporate sustainability, and this is from the Dow Jones World Sustainability Indexes Guide. And they define corporate sustainability as a business approach to create long-term shareholder value by embracing opportunities and managing risks deriving from economic, environmental, and social developments. And the aforementioned responsibilities essentially enable a company to manage and embrace these opportunities and risks derived from these different developments. The obvious major theme running throughout all of these responsibilities is the long-term nature of them. It requires a corporation to push themselves away from the short term and look towards the long term, recognizing that long-term shareholder value is more profitable. From this, the long-term nature of these responsibilities lend themselves very nicely to the three pillars of sustainability. I won't get into the examples in the interest of time, but as you can see, for each of the pillars, they range from Walmart to BC Hydro to the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, Procter & Gamble, Argos Cementos in Colombia. It really, runs the gamut. The challenges and opportunities that remain within the private sector and their role in sustainable development are obviously quite large. The debate, the ongoing debate as to whether corporate social performance or corporate environmental performance is actually relevant or even matters as opposed to the financial performance is ongoing. The issue of this fat or skinny approach, as I mentioned before, in respect to corporate governance and or corporate social responsibility, it's a question of whether how much these corporations choose to embrace it or whether it's just simply cosmetic. Some industries, it continues to be an issue that some industries may not immediately lend themselves to these initiatives or it may not seem applicable to them. I like the extractive industry as a good example that maybe several decades ago that you wouldn't have thought they lend themselves to stakeholder engagement and environmental strategies, but today they are the best cases for the long-term benefits associated with that type of behavior. And the final challenge, which is a continuing challenge and a recurring theme in all of our chapters, is the issue of will and leadership. This is critical, and as I mentioned before, the long-term nature of these initiatives requires a tremendous amount of will and strong leadership to carry out what at times takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of teamwork as such. And this is the private sector. Now, Danny's going to move on to the government.